There are so many things I want to make with the crafter that I didn't even know where to begin. So I did a live stream where I asked chat what I should make, and they voted for a TNT factory. And I sort of made one live on stream, but we can do better than that. So to make a TNT factory, we obviously need an unlimited supply of sand and an unlimited supply of gunpowder. And we'll start with the easy part. The sand. And unfortunately, the best way to do this is with a sand duplication glitch. Some of you might think it's cheating, but it's the only automatic way of doing this. The best alternative is to go to a desert, take out your shovel, and go ham on it. We don't have renewable sand in Minecraft, so Mojang? Please add it, but for now, we have to dupe. So I'm using this design by Scorpio on YouTube. There are only so many ways you can make a sand duplicator, and this is basically the best one. So this gives us infinite sand by tricking the game into thinking that the sand should stay here, but also sending it through the end portal. And the sand comes into the end like this, just flying out in all directions, where it falls down into these holes, and it lands on mud blocks which break it. And at the moment, all the items just get flushed into the void, because we don't have a gunpowder farm yet. So let's fix that. Now, unlike farming sand, for farming gunpowder, we're kind of spoiled for choice. We could use a witch farm like I did in my repeater factory. This gives us an okay amount of gunpowder, but it's not great. Witch farms got massively nerfed when 1.17 came out, so there are way faster farms. And this also isn't ideal because you would need to find a witch hut that's fairly close to an end portal. So you need to have pretty good luck finding these two structures close enough to each other. Using a witch farm for this just isn't a good idea. So instead, we could use a raid farm like this design by Nash on YouTube. Not only does it give us gunpowder from all the witches, but it gives us plenty of other drops as well. In total, it gives us around 17,000 gunpowder per hour, which is pretty good. With that much gunpowder, we could theoretically craft 3,400 TNT per hour. But before we settle on using a raid farm, there's still one more very obvious option that we haven't explored yet. And that is, of course, a creeper farm. This design that flushes the mobs out with water is probably the simplest design we can use that still gives you a decent amount of drops. But as you might already be able to tell, this farm has a big problem. The spiders. Putting trapdoors in the ceiling like this does prevent zombies, skeletons, and witches from spawning, but it doesn't prevent spider spawns, because they can spawn in 1 block high areas. So every time the game attempts to spawn mobs, there's a chance it could be a creeper, but there's also a chance it could be a spider, which actively takes away from the amount of gunpowder we get. This farm is making about 7,600 gunpowder per hour, but if I leave it running for a while longer, it fluctuates a lot. We were getting 7,600 before, and now we're only getting 7,300, and that will just keep going up and down. The drop rates of this thing are all over the place, because there's always a chance that the mob spawning might not be a creeper. So purple, why not just stop the spiders from spawning then? You'll surely get more gunpowder. Okay, voice inside my head. Let's try that.
A few moments later.
There we go. Absolutely no spiders can spawn here now. We've blocked off spawning spaces in a pattern like this, so there's nowhere on this platform that's wide enough for spiders to spawn. Only creepers can spawn here now. And lots of glow squids. So surely we're getting more gunpowder now. Why are we getting less? Well, that's because to get rid of the spiders, we've had to sacrifice a lot of spawning spaces. We've sacrificed so many, in fact, that it actually slows the farm down. It's better to just let the spiders spawn. So for the purpose of making a factory, this farm is fundamentally flawed. If you let the spiders spawn, then you're losing potential gunpowder. And if we don't let them spawn, we're losing even more gunpowder. So no matter what we do to it, this farm always has some kind of inefficiency. And you should also bear in mind that these are the ideal spawn rates. I've built this farm in a perimeter. If someone was to build this farm, they're not going to bomb out a perimeter. That's way too much effort just to build a mediocre creeper farm inside it. They're going to build it way up in the sky over an ocean, which massively lowers the spawn rates because of spawning algorithm stuff. If you're really going to go out of your way to bomb out a perimeter like this just for gunpowder, you should be making the best goddamn gunpowder farm there is. Like this design by Methods. This farm spawns the creepers on a gigantic platform underneath, and as soon as they spawn, they get vacuumed up into these boats, where their head gets moved next to this waterlogged stair here, so they immediately get ejected into the nether portal, where they emerge on the other side. And yeah, that's a lot of creepers. This farm is so fast that it gives us 169,699 gunpowder per hour. Nice. And with that much gunpowder, we could craft 34,000 TNT per hour. So clearly, this is the obvious choice for our factory, right? Well, it's a bit more complicated than that. All of these gunpowder farm designs are in the overworld, and the sand is in the end. They're in different dimensions, and at some point, we need to bring them together to the same place. Otherwise, we can't make the TNT, and this gives us a bit of a dilemma. There has to be someone in the overworld near the gunpowder farm, or else it won't spawn anything. But we also need someone in the end to keep everything loaded. Otherwise, we can't transport the sand back to the overworld. So that means that this factory needs 2 players to operate it. And I don't really want that. I want a factory that can be operated by just 1 player. But how on earth are we going to do that? This basically means that we need a gunpowder farm in the end. Well, it's time to revisit our old friend, the raid farm. Because believe it or not, you can trigger raids in the end. Oh no, they're coming for me now. Actually, no, they're just doing some very passive-aggressive jumping. But in order to make this work in the end, we need to make some modifications. For starters, we need to get rid of these nether portals. In the overworld, these are very important because they get rid of the Ravagers, but in the end, they're useless to us because you can't light nether portals here. But this isn't a problem because the end dimension has a very convenient alternative way to get rid of the Ravagers. You see, the thing about the end dimension is it's mostly an empty void. So now the raid farm just yeets the Ravagers off like this. Oh god, it's so stupid. But if I speed up the game for a second using the new tick sprint command, eventually this kind of thing can happen, where a Ravager doesn't get launched quite far enough outwards, and it lands on one of the blocks. In fact, a second one just landed here, and if one of these Ravagers has an evoker on its back, that's a big problem. The evoker will spawn Vexes, which will kill us. So we have to completely stop this from happening. And all we have to do to stop that is build some giant walls around the farm. But this farm still has a bit of a problem, and to demonstrate it, I need to run out of hunger. The problem is that once my hunger bar is empty, I start taking starvation damage, which slowly knocks me backwards. Now, the regeneration effect from the beacon does keep me alive, but eventually I'm gonna get pushed so far back that I won't be hitting any of the mobs anymore. Like you can see here, they're not taking damage anymore, and there's quite a few evokers in here. If they stay alive long enough, they're gonna start spawning Vexes. And I got killed by a Vex. But luckily, this design flaw is very easy to fix. We can just slide a fence underneath this birch trapdoor, so when we get in, we can't get knocked out now, but if we do want to get out, then we still have access to this lever. And this completely solves the issue. We don't get knocked back any further than this. My head is still far enough inside the minecart, so the mobs get sweeping edge damage. And all it took was 2 pistons, an observer, and a bit of redstone. So now we have a fully functional Ravager yeeting end dimension raid farm. We've modified it to work in the end, and we fixed a design flaw with the original. And now for the bit that you've all been waiting for, the auto crafting. We need to take the gunpowder from this farm and combine it with the sand from the sand duper. So now it's time to make the auto crafting setup. I did make a crafting setup on the live stream, but I deliberately made it really scuffed just to troll my friend Crafty. So after the live stream, I made this design, which is much smaller. So to get it working, you need to pre-fill the crafter with 2 of each item. Then the gunpowder goes in the left dropper and the sand goes in the right dropper, and it automatically starts crafting us TNT. And this redstone back here is there to make sure that the crafter never loses its recipe. If either one of these droppers gets too low on items, then it's immediately gonna stop crafting, and the recipe is preserved. And I would use this design if I only needed 1 crafter. But with the sheer amount of gunpowder and sand we're making, 1 crafter just isn't enough. These will get full very quickly, and most of the items will go to waste. We absolutely need more than 1 crafter, and doing that would be much easier with a smaller design. This crafter basically works the same as the other one. If either hopper is almost empty, then it stops crafting. The main difference is that it doesn't use droppers. So we don't need this gigantic circuit here, which pulses each dropper the correct number of times. That does mean that we have to pre-fill the crafter with a whole stack of items instead of just 2 items, but we literally have infinite gunpowder and infinite sand, so this is really not a problem. And with that, we finally have everything we need to make a TNT factory. And there it is. It might not look like much, but this is a TNT factory. So to turn it on, first we have to flip this lever to activate this chunk loader and to activate the sand duper. Then we go through into the end and we start up the raid farm. Then you wait a while for the raid farm to warm up, and then the drops start coming in, where they go along these water streams and get sorted into these chests. The gunpowder gets sorted into these droppers, where it gets dispensed out and goes into this water stream towards the crafter. And the result of all our hard work is automatically crafted TNT. And it actually fills up at a pretty decent rate. It's probably like 1 TNT every 3 seconds, but just for any avoidance of doubt, it's making about 2,500 TNT per hour. I don't know, is that good? I haven't seen anyone else make a TNT factory yet. Let's just take this in for a moment. There's sand appearing out of nowhere and flying out in all directions, and there's ravagers spawning in and immediately falling into the void. This is probably the stupidest looking farm I've ever created. But that's just how far I'll go to make stupid redstone. Subscribe.